Good evening, one and all. We welcome you all to the 9th day of 10 Days International Conference on Social Work, Sciences, Technologies, Environment, Climate Change, Disaster Management, Health, Well-being, and Sustainable Development 2023, commemorating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, nation celebrating 76 years of independence. India's G20 presidency and United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2015 to 2030 as part of awareness and campaigns in collaboration with Sri Holistic Health Foundation India and Sri Research Institute Center for Art, Sciences and Well-being and international and national multidisciplinary fraternity. So before we start our sessions, let's take the blessings of Almighty.
कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः
The blessings of Almighty. We shall continue with today's sessions. So before we start, those who have registered for the presentations are requested to complete the formalities and share your details in chat box like your name, designation, organization, and the topic of presentation in the chat box to host and co-host, so that we can invite you for the presentations after this session. So today, we are commemorating International Day of Remembrance of the Tribute of the Victims to the Victims of Terrorism. And this is the 6th year. With the theme Legacy, Finding Hope and Building Better Future. Acts of terrorism propagating a wide range of hateful ideologies continue to injure, harm, and kill thousands of innocent people each year. Despite international condemnation of terrorism, Victims and survivors of terrorism often struggle to have their voices heard. They need supported and their rights upheld. Victims often feel forgotten, neglected, and once the immediate aftermath of a terrorist attack fades, with profound consequences for them. Few member states have the resources or the capacity to fulfill the medium and long-term needs of victims of terrorism, to enable them to fully recover, rehabilitate, and reintegrate into society. Most victims can recover and cope with their trauma through long-term multidimensional support, including physical, psychological, social, and financial. Member states have the primary responsibility to support victims of terrorism and uphold their rights. The United Nations has an important role in supporting member states to implement the UN Global Terrorism Strategy, UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy, by standing in solidarity and providing support to the victims of terrorism, offering support to the civil society organizations, particularly victims associations, and encouraging media states to promote, protect, and respect the rights of victims of terrorism. The United Nations provides technical assistance and capacity building to member states and victims association in better addressing the needs of the victims of terrorism. The resolution, in its resolution 72 by 165 in 2017, the General Assembly established the International Day of Remembrance of the Tribute to the Victims of Terrorism to be commemorated annually on 21st August in order to honor and support the victims and survivors of the terrorism and to promote and protect the full enjoyment of their human rights and fundamental freedoms. In April 2020, mandated by General Assembly Resolution 73 by 305, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres published his report on the progress of the UN system to support member states in assisting victims of terrorism, which calls for the enhancement of international cooperation to assist victims of terrorism. Member states, through the biannual review resolutions of the Global Counterterrorism Strategy, have emphasized the important role of victims of terrorism in countering terrorism, promoting internal solidarity, preventing violent extremism, and helping member states recognize and uphold their human rights and support their distinct needs. Since the sixth review of the strategy 2018, developments of the international, regional, and national levels have increasingly demonstrated that support to the victims have moved beyond and symbolic solidarity towards a more robust engagement to advance their rights and needs. This is reflected in the establishment in 2019 of a group of friends of victims of terrorism and the adoption of General Assembly Resolution 73 by 305 on the enhancement of international cooperation to assist the victims of terrorism. The eighth review resolution adopted on 22nd June 2023, this year, White 77 by 298, notes the importance of upholding the rights and supporting the needs of the victims of terrorism. In particular of women and children, those affected by sexual and gender-based violence committed by terrorists. It encourages all member states to develop national comprehensive assistance plans for the victims of terrorism and their families to address the immediate, short and long-term needs of victims of terrorism. The resolution welcomed the first United Nations Global Congress of Victims of Terrorism held in September 2022 at the United Nations headquarters, encourages the UN Office of Counterterrorism through the Global Victims of Terrorism Support Program and the United Nations Victims of Terrorism Support Portal to continue raise awareness on the victims of terrorism and the promotion and protection of their rights. This includes strengthening of the capacity of member states to assist victims of terrorism and strengthen their engagement with relevant civil society and private sector organizations, which can play a valuable role in assisting and supporting the victims of terrorism. So the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism, UNOCT, was established on 15th June 2017 through the adaptation of UN General Assembly Resolution 71/291. Mr. Vladimir Voronkov was appointed as its first Under-Secretary General. By providing Secretariat support, UNOCT works together with members of United Nations Global Counter-Terrorism Coordination Compact to prevent and counter terrorism and the underlying spread of violent extremism. The support portal to express solidarity with the victims of terrorism is dedicated to and highlights the importance of those individuals across the globe that have been attacked, injured, traumatized, or lost their lives through terrorism attacks. They reflect on the pain and suffering of those who lost loved ones, and resolve to listen to them and learn from. So we commit to support survivors scarred by heinous acts of terrorism by amplifying their voices, protecting their rights, and seeking injustice. As already mentioned, the General Assembly in its resolution 72/165 of 2017 proclaimed 21st August as the International Day of Remembrance of and Tribute to the Victims of Terrorism. The main focus of the International Day is to honor, remember, and pay tribute to the victims of terrorism by standing in solidarity and promoting and protecting their human rights and fundamental freedoms. Acts of terrorism propagating a wide range of hateful ideologies continue to injure, harm, and kill thousands of innocent people each year. Despite international condemnation of terrorism, victims and survivors of terrorism often struggle to have their voices heard, their needs supported, and their rights upheld. Victims often feel forgotten and neglected once the immediate aftermath of a terrorist attack fades, with profound consequences for them. Few member states have the resources or the capacity to fulfill the medium and long-term needs of the victims of terrorism to enable them to fully recover and rehabilitation and reintegrate into society. Most victims can only recover and cope with their trauma through long-term multidimensional support, including physical, psychological, social, and financial. Member states have the primary responsibility to support victims of terrorism and uphold their rights. The United Nations has an important role in supporting member states to implement the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy by standing in solidarity and providing support to victims of terrorism, offering capacity building, assistance, establishing networks, and offering support to the civil society organizations, particularly victims associations, and encouraging member states to promote, protect, and respect rights of victims of terrorism. The United Nations provides technical assistance and capacity building to member states and victims associations in better addressing the needs of the victims of terrorism. Let's watch a short video.
The Memories campaign consists of a documentary film and a photographic exhibition that tell the stories of a series of objects possessed by victims of terrorism featured in the film, and an interactive exhibition to illustrate the memories and emotions that such objects represent to their owners.
The rosary, which was in my father's hand when he passed away.
My beautiful 21-year-old daughter was tragically stabbed to death in the London Borough Market terror attack.
And from that day on, her spirit has been with me.
The exhibition features life-size pictures with QR codes that link to short films about the victims. It enables audiences to relate to the victims, feel their loss, and better understand the importance of remembering and paying tribute to those who have been lost to terrorism or those who have been forever changed as a consequence.
I haven't met someone who has gotten over the death of a loved one. You don't. You just find a way around it.
3 bombs shattering my wedding reception, which was taking place in Amman, Jordan. We lost in the wedding 27 people, including my father, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law.
The first explosion had gone off, and my daughter dropped to her knees and screamed, my dad.
When I was 4 months old, I was affected by the 1998 US Embassy terrorist attack, where my dad was killed.
Cuando tenía 12 años, explotó el coche en el que viajábamos mi madre y yo al colegio. Cuando me desperté, estaba en la UCI, sin saber dónde estaba mi madre, sin saber que no tenía piernas y sin 3 dedos.
My beautiful 21-year-old daughter was in London, and she was tragically stabbed to death in the London Borough Market terror attack.
J'ai suivi des grands bruits. Ratatatata, pang, pang, pang. Je ne savais pas ce qui se passe. Je prends donc une balle qui me transperce totalement la main droite.
A person was maybe two to 3 feet away from me. He yelled his last prayers and he pressed the detonator. I got lifted from that place and I landed on my both feet and I just went unconscious.
When I was 17, I was shot 5 times at Utøya terrorist attack. I remember looking at my hand, and at that point, 2 of the fingers was just hanging there in some flesh, but nothing more. It's because I've done like that, trying to stop the bullets with my hand. I wasn't a superhero. It was.
There was this almighty explosion, and I saw this big cloud coming towards me. There was a smell that I'll never forget. I looked up and I just said, I've got to get through this, otherwise my daughter's going to be an orphan.
J'ai perdu mon mari et mon fils aux attentats du Casablanca.
On 9/11, we were at a gas leak, and all of a sudden we heard a loud noise of a plane coming overhead. And then I saw the plane aim and crash into the World Trade Center. I was the first chief to be in charge.
Bila dia gasan ni maka garin gring sare. Ada ganan kalau dia agak dari kuah to see. Yes dan luas kalau cara. Dua tren uang kaya uros also de las uas o chetas da exclu.
Estaba reventada, estaba todo destrozado.
We knew that a gunman live streamed his crime at a Noor Mosque on Facebook. We came to know the names of the people who were injured, and the last name was my husband's name, and my son's name wasn't there.
When the bombing blast, I was standing in the main gate. I was hospitalized for 5 months. I lost my left eye.
يعني داخل السنجر جاءوا كتبوا 3 أيام ظلينا بقحط عنية. جاءوا كتبوا أسماءنا على الأوراق الصغيرة. طلع اسمي على واحد من الموصل كمان مرة ثانية. هذا أول واحد اللي اعتدى علي واغتصبني وضربني إنه دائما كنت هيك أخرمش بيها. عندهم كنت يعني من كتر الخوف والقلق والأشياء اللي بداخلي إنه ما كان عندي حد إنه.
I remember one lieutenant from Engine 33 coming in very quietly. We didn't say a word. We looked at each other and wondering if we were both going to be okay. And then I told that fire lieutenant, as I told many other fire officers, go up. That was the last time I saw my brother Kevin. both World Trade Center buildings collapsed. And we lost almost 3,000 people. And I lost 343 firefighters.
A shot that got through my head, and I remember vividly taking my hand up to feel what was going on, and just feeling like this soft stuff here, and that was me, actually feeling my own brain. This picture here, it's of us three. It's me, Anders, Simon. It's a reminder of being youthful and being like nobody can stop us from anything we want, and the world is filled with opportunities.
The first thing that I saw was my legs, and I looked up and I thank God. I said, I'm intact in one piece. That picture of mine does not say that I'm not fine. It shows the courage, the power of it, that I'm okay. It's a picture which speaks 1,000 words.
Sa montre, elle était là. C'est la seule chose que j'ai gardée de mon mari de ce jour-là. Quand je la touche, c'est comme si je touche le bras. N'a pas suffi aux terroristes de m'enlever mon mari, mais aussi mon fils. J'ai décidé de graver son prénom.
Ha sido muy duro porque yo he sido madre soltera y nunca pensé que iba a sufrir un atentado terrorista. Y yo le pedía, me acuerdo en el hospital, a las enfermeras, y yo les decía, por favor, si me pasa algo, llevarla a Ecuador con mis padres, no la dejéis sola. El estar siempre las dos es una fortaleza muy importante para mí. Siempre viene y me abraza y me dice, estoy aquí, ¿vale?
I can't describe how devastating as a parent to lose a child in these circumstances is for you the rest of your life. Sarah was very responsible, capable, vibrant, full of life.
Sarah was having the trip of a lifetime. We used the phone to connect every day. That was, every message, every emoji, every photo.
Everything just stopped in that point of time. When Sarah stopped, the phone stopped.
I didn't really get a taste of what it really felt to grow up with a father who can nurture you, who can go with you to soccer games. The reason why I like suits is because it reminds me of my father. He was well dressed, and every time I do wear a suit, it brings back the memories of the stories that my mom used to tell me about him. I would like my dad to be proud wherever he is, just to look and say, oh, truly, in as much as I cannot be there with him physically, but I'm still proud of him as a young boy and also as a young man.
This is the rosary which was in my father's hand when he passed away. When I see a guy holding a rosary, it reminds me of my father.
I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to see anybody. My daughter was only 9, and all I was capable of doing was taking her to school in the morning and picking her up. I remember just putting my arms and hugging her so tightly, thinking that I was one of the lucky ones. This is a ticket, and it relates to the London bombings. It is a ticket to my sanity in terms of the connections with everybody that was affected, bereaved, and the survivors.
Lex no, that's not resign. Lex no, aka yi still rosada uruchara ma wada madi aka tir rosada uruchara tana da bleeding zalla dikin yaran gaba kalkalo liyamba dange don dinana akai suwa kwazne no don dide before I was doing ajindo gaskiya kam fandin urology sana more especially ma aude siku wada kuma akwai da cikin tinyiro walzu kuro rayuwar walzu ne shi awa share siku aude wasu na da siku.
L'histoire derrière cette photo, c'est la première rencontre avec mon fils après l'attaque. C'est l'expression de la victoire. Ça marque mon courage et ici ma joie de vivre.
I was thinking of my granddaughter. She's an orphan now. Every time I will look in the eyes of my granddaughter, lovely eyes and inquisitive eyes, is like, where is daddy? How can I really help her understand? This is the story that I'm going to write for Aya. It's the butterfly and the granddaughter, which is Aya, and myself. When the butterfly hatched, it was a male butterfly. The butterfly has to go, which means she has to accept the situation that we are in.
Mi madre dijo, con esto tenemos que vivir siempre, así que elige vivir amargadas, frustradas, maldiciendo a los terroristas. O decidir que tu vida empieza hoy y vamos a mirar adelante con optimismo. Yo le dije, mamá, he nacido sin piernas. Rafael Alberti me mandó al hospital algo que me dio muchísima fuerza en ese momento. Dice a Irene que llegará a volar como esta paloma.
During my first year after the Boston Marathon bombing, I was struggling. The explosion caused some acoustic damage. I had left my job. My son left school. I had sketched out a design. I just wanted at that time to have something special, again, to raise money for folks that may have been suffering like I was at the time.
This picture reminds me that terrible situation during the bombing blast. I know it's hard to see. I don't want it happen to my children.
There's an object that I hold very dear to my heart, and it's my white fire chief's helmet. I think of that helmet as who I was that day. It became a symbol for the world, a symbol of hope. That helmet reminds me of the helmet as they climbed the narrow stairs of the World Trade Center, so others may live.
I've been living with my pain for the past 16 years, but this pain have converted into something that I think that is very good to be told as a story, will heal me and will help other people to understand that whatever the story that these groups or these ideologies are telling us is not the correct one.
ما راح نقول لكم إنه نريد كل حقوقاتنا، على الأقل يعني نحس بأمان، يعني نكون في منطقة آمنة إنه ما يتكرر هذا الشيء مرة ثانية.
These are acts that cannot be undone. I haven't met someone who has gotten over the death of a loved one. You don't. You just find a way around it.
You tried
The year 2022 saw the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism continuing to support member states in countering terrorism and preventing violent extremism, while reinforcing the UN Secretary-General's vision for reinvigorated multilateralism, as outlined in his Our Common Agenda report. Throughout 2022, providing policy leadership on the UN General Assembly's counter-terrorism mandate remained at the center of UNOCT's efforts. In collaboration with the Security Council's Counter-Terrorism Committee Executive Directorate, CTED, and the Al-Qaeda Monitoring Team, Under-Secretary General Vladimir Voronkov briefed the Security Council twice on the threat posed by Daesh ISIL. He also briefed the Counter-Terrorism Committee on the situations in Syria, Africa, and Central Asia and informed them about challenges related to new technologies. As requested by the General Assembly, UNOCT prepared the Secretary-General's report on terrorist attacks based on xenophobia, racism, and other forms of intolerance, or carried out in the name of religion or belief, to advance understanding of these threats. In total, we engaged in 161 high-level bilateral meetings and a range of multilateral events, including briefings to member states and civil society roundtables. UNOCT's high-level counterterrorism conferences have accelerated the implementation of the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy, promoting international cooperation and the sharing of expertise, leading to several important milestones. In March, the high-level international conference on regional cooperation among Central Asian states in Tashkent, Uzbekistan endorsed the updated Joint Regional Plan of Action. That same month, the first annual Beneficiaries Forum in Doha, Qatar contributed to strengthening CTPCV programming, enabling a better response to beneficiaries' needs. In May, the first high-level international conference on human rights, civil society, and counterterrorism took place in Malaga, Spain. This was followed in June by the first high-level event of heads of counterterrorism and security agencies to enhance capacity building and training for West African countries. In September, the first UN Global Congress of Victims of Terrorism was held in New York. And in October, the first high-level conference on border security and management cooperation to counter terrorism and prevent the movement of terrorists was hosted in Dushanbe, Tajikistan. Serving as the Secretariat for the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Coordination Compact, UNOCT played a critical role in ensuring coordination and coherence across the UN system to support member states' counterterrorism efforts. In April, the Global Counterterrorism Coordination Compact welcomed 2 new members, the Investigative Team to Promote Accountability for Crimes Committed by Daesh, UNITAD, and the Financial Action Task Force, FATF. With 45 member entities, the Compact has become the largest coordination framework within the United Nations. The Compact's 8 working groups held more than 38 meetings to facilitate information sharing, while a dedicated portal ensured collaboration between 994 focal points from the 45 Compact entities, 136 member states and 12 international and regional organizations, with over 172,000 unique visits to date. All through 2022, UNOCT continued to strengthen the delivery of UN counterterrorism capacity building and technical assistance to member states. The UN Counterterrorism Center, now in its 11th year, retained its role as a center of excellence, running 41 programs and projects and working with 168 countries to support the implementation of the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy. UNOCT's Special Projects and Innovations branch provided specialized expertise through 12 programs, 11 knowledge products and more than 300 days of training to over 1,100 participants. Continuing to extend our presence away from headquarters to better support beneficiaries, our program office in Nairobi, Kenya was set up in March while the new UNOCT office in Madrid, Spain opened in October. 2022 also saw the launch of several new initiatives, including a dedicated human rights and gender section within UNOCT,
the EU-UN Global Terrorism Threats Facility, to provide rapid response support to member states. The CT Tech Initiative, developed with Interpol and the EU, to counter the exploitation of new technologies for terrorist purposes. A project on protecting vulnerable targets through the use of behavioral insights to strengthen law enforcement capabilities. And the first model legislative provisions on support for victims and survivors of terrorism, launched in collaboration with the UN Office on Drugs and Crime and the Interparliamentary Union. There were also many highlights centered around capacity building. Supported by the Countering Terrorist Travel Program, Norway and then Botswana became the first member states to use the UN software solution Go Travel to detect and prevent the movement of terrorists. More than 50 other countries are in the pipeline. Within the framework of the Global Programme on the Prevention of Violent Extremism, UNCCT launched its first regional youth engagement and empowerment programme in South and Southeast Asia. The scoping exercise under the global framework on all of UN support to member states on individuals returned from Syria and Iraq chaired by UNOCT and UNICEF, resulted in an interagency coordination mechanism in Iraq to support nearly 4,000 returnees from Syria's Al-Hol and Al-Roj camps. UNOCT's International Hub on Behavioral Insights to Counter Terrorism launched the Going to Extremes podcast series, featuring experts discussing PCVE solutions, while our online Connect and Learn platform, which now hosts 40 courses and 21 communities of practice, expanded to nearly 2,000 users. Because we understand that successful capacity building requires dynamic partnerships, we strengthened our strategic collaboration with some 150 new civil society, private sector, and academia partners and signed 32 Memoranda of Understanding with member states and Global Compact entities. In addition, the UNOCT Programme Office on Parliamentary Engagement in Doha established an online network of parliamentarians and a coordination mechanism for parliamentary assemblies around the world. It also organized 2 high-level parliamentary conferences on the terrorist threat in Africa in March and on victims of terrorism in June. UNOCT's communication efforts in support of our mandate to improve visibility for United Nations counterterrorism efforts led to over 1 million page views on our websites and over 300 million impressions on Twitter. During the FIFA World Cup, the #MoreThanAGame campaign on sports and PVE, featuring professional footballer and UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador Dr. Nadia Nadim, generated 39 million impressions. In 2022, UNOCT was supported by 36 donors, to whom we are grateful. We also continued joint resource mobilization efforts under the United Nations Multi-Year Appeal for Counterterrorism. One of our key priorities remains ensuring sufficient, predictable, and flexible funding to continue serving member states in all areas of our mandate. As we look to the future, UNOCT looks forward to working with UN member states, compact entities, civil society and all our valued partners, building on the strong foundation already in place to create an effective and well-coordinated UN system contribution to global counterterrorism efforts.
Office of the Counter-Terrorism, UN Terrorism Center, UNCCT, aims to show solidarity, raise awareness on, and contribute to protecting, promoting, and respecting the rights and supporting needs of the victims of terrorism. This unit also works towards building the capacity of member states and civil society organizations to better support the needs of the victims of terrorism. The UN Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy highlights the importance of protecting victims' rights and needs, and the strategy numerous relevant General Assembly and Security Council resolutions. Plan of action and other normative frameworks provide the basis of program. Two recent General Assembly resolutions dedicated to the victims of terrorism have been created a large, stronger framework to increase the member states' efforts on victims and has asked the UN Office of the Counter-Terrorism, UNCOT, and UNCCT to strengthen and broaden its programs. These include establishing the International Day of Remembrance of and Tribute to the Victims of Terrorism, calling for strengthened internal cooperation to assist the voice of terror. With this, we shall conclude the commemoration, and you can see social workers can find numerous ways to contribute and provide their services. So if anyone would like to make presentations, can share the details. Otherwise, there seems to be some network problem here. So we will conclude it here for the day, and we will continue tomorrow. Yeah, Dr. Mohammed, are you ready with your presentation? We can take it up. The feedback form for session 1 has been shared. We request everyone to quickly fill up the feedback form. Dr. Mohammed, after filling up the feedback form, you can raise your hand so that we can give you the permissions to make your presentation. We request everyone to quickly attend to the feedback form, which has been raised in the form of polls. Request everyone to quickly fill up the feedback form. Yeah, Dr. Mohammed, now you can unmute yourself, start your video.
The video. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir. You can start your video and also your PPT.
But video, it says
Hmm.
one participant can share at a time.
You can share. There is no one sharing now. Nah?
Okay.
Then open your PPT. Can see your Gmail.
Can you see my PPT?
No. We can see your Gmail window. You have to select the PPT, the window in which PPT is visible. Yeah, now your PPT is visible. You can also switch on your video. You are muted. You have to unmute yourself. We can see your PPT and video, but we can't hear you. Yeah, now I think we can hear you. You can share.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you. We can see you.
Okay, okay.
You can share your PPT.
Yes. Okay, see.
Yeah, you can start your presentation with your introduction. Over.
Okay. Thank you. So my name is Dr. Mohammed Guttigar. So I'm working at the NPO deemed to be University, Mangalore. So I'm the associate professor and head of the Department of Social Work. So I've been working at the NPO for last 23 years. Before that, I was working in the NGO for 16 years as a project coordinator. So I'm also a founder, trustee of a NGO, which works for social development, women empowerment, and natural resource management. So today I'm going to present my study on utilization of maternal health care services by the Koraga women in southern Karnataka. Introduction. The tribal population is found in almost all parts of the world. The tribal are the indigenous people of the land who are believed to be the earliest settlers in the Indian peninsula. There are approximately 200 million tribal people in the entire globe, constituting about 4% of the global population. India has the second largest tribal population in the world, the first being Africa. The tribal population in India constitutes 8.6% of the total population, according to 2011 census. 89.97% of them live in rural areas and 10% in urban areas. Among the tribes, 75 are categorized as particularly vulnerable tribal groups, PVTGs. Earlier, they were known as primitive tribal groups, PTGs. This categorization is based on their pre-agriculture level of technology, stagnant or declining population, extremely low literacy, and subsistence level of economy. The Koraga tribes. The Koraga tribes is one among the two particularly vulnerable tribal groups declared by the Government of India. The Koraga tribes are found mainly in the Dakshina Kannada and Udupi district of Karnataka and the Kasaragod district of Kerala, South India. Their population is 14,794 as per the 2011 census. The Koragas are socio-economically backward. A great majority of them lead a hard life. At present, limited number of them are engaged in their traditional occupations like basket weaving and coir making. As they are driven out of the forest with no option in hand, started working as Paur Karmikas, that means sanitary workers in village panchayats, town municipalities, and city corporations. Nowadays, they also work as daily wage earners in various fields. Maternal mortality and morbidity continue to be high among various tribal groups despite the existence of national programs for improving maternal and child health in India. One of the most important is the non-utilization or underutilization of the maternal health care services, especially amongst the rural populations due to their lack of awareness or access to healthcare services. Although Dakshina Kannada is being acclaimed for its 100% literacy achievement, the Koragas still are deprived of basic facilities and agitating for their rights. This study focuses on the health-seeking behavior of Koraga women with respect to the utilization of maternal and child health care in Dakshina Kannada district. Objective: to study the utilization of maternal health care services by the Koraga women in Dakshina Kannada district. Method and materials. An exploratory study was conducted amongst 113 Koraga families residing in 5 talukas of Dakshina Kannada district using a proportionate stratified sampling method. Semi-structured interview schedule, pilot tested and validated what was used. Data collected on demographic variables, maternal health, and health-seeking behavior. For recording information on health-seeking by the Koraga tribe women during the antenatal and postnatal period, the last birth for each woman of childbearing age during the 5 years prior to the survey was considered. Data processing and analysis were done using the social sciences statistical package. Results. Among the 300 studied families, 113 women from 96 families availed the maternal health care services. Only this survey was done in 113 women in 96 families. So 88.5% of women in the age group of 22 to 44 years and 11.5% in the age group of 15 to 21 years, both from rural and urban areas, availed the services, which is depicted in Table 1. 84% of antenatal mothers from rural and urban locations were educated. Among them, a majority, 62%, had primary level education. Occupation shows that nearly 1/4 of them from rural and urban areas were homemakers. 21% daily wage earners, 18% BD rollers, 12% in basketry, and whereas 5% poor karmikas. That means they were working as sanitary workers. Nearly 20% were unemployed. The association between antenatal care-seeking behavior and occupation of Koraga tribe women was found significant. Sources of health services utilized by antenatal mothers show that most, 94.7% of them, from rural areas. Table number 2, type of maternal health care facilities utilized by 113 women. So when I classified maternal facility, tetanus toxoid, IFP, iron and folic acid, and supplementary nutrition aspects were considered. So TT, so among the rural women, 76% availed, urban 100% availed. So total 81% was the result. IFP, iron and folic acid facility was utilized by 79% of women in rural areas and 10% in urban areas. So in total, 83% utilized IFA services. Then supplementary nutrition facility was utilized by 73.6% women in the rural area and 100% in the urban area. So in total, 78.8% utilized the services. Nearly 81% of mothers from both locations availed TT, IFA through PHCs and supplementary nutrition that was applied to the Anganwadi centers under the ICDS program. The observed difference in availing maternal benefits by antenatal mothers in rural and urban locations was found statistically significant. Then as regards the health checkup facility availed by antenatal mothers, out of 113 antenatal mothers, 88% from the rural and urban locations had availed health checkup facilities. 38.9% of the mothers had at least 3 antenatal visits and 12% were irregular. 78% of expecting and nursing mothers availed supplementary nutrition facilities from the Anganwadi centers run under the ICDS program. 63% of mothers also availed incentives for mother delivered in government hospitals. Of the total 110 deliveries, 71% were conducted in hospitals, mostly in government PHCs. Immunization of children less than 5 years of age was found to be good among Koraga tribe families in rural and urban locations. It was observed that in 113 cases, 81% of the children were completely immunized in both locations. Awareness of family planning practice was found in 62% of women, of whom awareness was high among the members in the urban households. Discussion. The findings of this study on antenatal checkups received by the Koraga mothers are comparable with the studies on tribals in Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. The Koraga women mostly availed antenatal services from the government hospitals and 5.3% from private sources. This finding is significant as compared to a study in Jharkhand where 72% did not have antenatal care. There is improvement in availing maternal benefits among Koraga women as compared to a study conducted among Koragas in 1994, where 56% of families availed maternal benefits from the government PHCs. There is a statistically significant association between income and poor dietary habits during the antenatal and postnatal period among Koraga mothers. A similar result was reported in a nutritional status study of tribal pregnant women of Haryana state, where the dietary intake of pregnant women was found lower than the recommended. The present study finding shows significant improvement in institutional deliveries, 71% among Koragas. Conclusion. Health-seeking behavior is a key factor in health management, but this is often ignored while considering schemes for providing health facilities to people. Mother and child health issues are of great concern among the tribal community, which needs to be investigated holistically for their sustainable development. Though the findings of the study are satisfactory, considering the rapid changes in society, there is still a significant gap in the population who do not access MCH services. Improving community awareness of maternal and child health services and strengthening partnership with various stakeholders will go a long way in providing sustainable health care for the Koraga women. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Very well presented. Participants, if you have any queries, you can raise your hand or you can use chat box. Or you can unmute yourself. If you are unable to unmute yourself, you can raise your hand to share feedback, comments, observations, if any.
I think there are no questions.
Yeah, okay. So,
thank you, sir, for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mohammed.
And thank you for the participants.
Thank you for your wonderful presentations, and we wish you all the success and look forward for more presentations from you in future.
Thank you, sir.
So anyone who have registered on spot and are willing to present, you can share your details in the chat box. And we request those who have registered to complete all the formalities as mentioned in the presentation guidelines and the registration form before presentation or immediately after the presentation. If there are no further presentations, then we will conclude it here for the day. Have shared the overall feedback form for the day. We request everyone to quickly fill the overall feedback form. Do join in time because attendance is also taken. Tomorrow is the last day of 10 days conference. So tomorrow is the last opportunity for anyone, those who have not yet presented. Or willing to present, to make presentations. You can access the feedback form from the polls quizzes option, or you can quickly log in and log out to access the feedback form if you are unable to access. Thank you everyone for joining. See you all tomorrow. Before leaving, we request everyone to quickly fill up the feedback form, overall feedback form that has been raised. In the form of polls. All the certificates for all the eligible who have completed formalities and have minimum attendance. They will be verified and certificate will be issued. After the conference, in a week's time, you can download your certificates from the website. We request everyone, those who have not completed formalities, to complete the formalities. Those who have not registered, have directly joined, can visit the website and register yourself. Daily, the registration link and website address is being shared in the chat box. You can make note of it. Thank you once again for everyone for joining us. See you all tomorrow. Take care. Good night.